Billy-Joe. How you going?
Good.
That's good.
Very
Do you
good.
prefer Billy-Joe or Billy?
I get everything.
Billy?
Billy's fine.
Welcome to Forest.
Yeah, thank you.
Just been out for your first mountain bike ride in Forest?
Second, and my second mountain bike ride for the year.
Right. How was it?
It was amazing.
Yeah.
I got into cycling when I was 15 years old, and I'd never been particularly good at any kind of sport.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't kick, couldn't run, couldn't throw a ball, couldn't do anything like
Yeah.
that. And quickly realised that I had a bit of potential on the bike.
Yeah.
Started winning a bunch of sprints with training rides
Yeah.
and that. And then we left South Africa, came to Australia, and I just got straight into it. Fell in at Blackburn Cycling Club, jumped on the road, jumped on the track, and had success straight away. And I was just hooked, because particularly because I'd never been good at anything. Suddenly I was good at something, and it just changed my whole world. Yeah. I was picked up by the Victorian Institute of Sport in a talent ID program by Hilton Clark, and he quickly realised he had a lot of trouble getting me to do anything. Couldn't get me to train, couldn't get me to turn up to sessions and that. So he palmed me off to Dave Sanders at the time. And Dave hammered me behind the motorbike for 2 years and got me all the way up to medalling at the Nationals on the track. Top 3, but never winning. And from there, he got Charlie Walsh to have a look at me. He tried 3 or 4 times, couldn't get me in. But I kept medaling against Charlie's guys. I didn't like structure or you know, I just didn't respond well to being told what to do.
You're in the AIS now, under Charlie Walsh.
Yeah, well, I went in there. They did the way the AIS worked back then. I don't know what they do now, but they would take you in. They'd do a barrage of tests on you, and they would basically test every different aspect of your physiology. And then Charlie Walsh would come to you and say, "This is what you could be good at. This is what you could be good at." He came to me and said, "You've got no talent and no ability, but you seem determined, we'll take you away on a training camp." And he took me around a training camp, and I just did really well on the training camp. So he said, "All right, you're still not going to make it, but we'll take you to Europe to ride the road tours." So I went to Europe to ride the road tours. I won a couple of smaller races in Germany. And so he said, "All right, well, we'll keep you around for track training to help the other guys train." But still, the whole way telling me I didn't have what it took. And it came close to the world titles, and I was one of the stronger guys in the track squad. And they only had 4. They didn't have anyone good enough to be a reserve, so I got a ride. And it ended up that was the year we won the world title.
Old rivals now in competition again in the race for gold. And they're coming round to just 1,000 metres. Australia have gone clear at the 1:13.750. That's a tremendous start. And that, in fact, is the tremendous second kilometre by Australia. They're so tight. Look at the way they're riding on the wheels. They're almost touching those wheels, and they're all anxious to get to the front. And there's the cross on the opposite side of the track. And Australia know now that they're heading for the gold medal in the World Championship. Aiken has gone off the back as these 3 now go. Will they get the world record time? It looks to me as though they're right on it. It's going to be very, very tight indeed. As they come up to the line, clock stops from the third man, 4:3.822. They have smashed the world record, and they've almost got up to 60 kilometres an hour. The Australians of Aitken, O'Grady, O'Shannessy and Shearsby cannot believe this week. Then now I think they probably will think they've gone a lap short of the stadium. That is a superb
4 minutes and 3
record.
seconds exactly is how long it took. I remember parts of that like it was yesterday, because we had done so many in training, and we knew we were riding fast. We knew we were quick in training. We were setting really fast times. We got to Norway and we qualified fastest, and the 4 of us knew that's probably how it was going to go down. So I remember vividly on the night before the final, I remember lying in bed, and I was sharing a room with Brett Aiken, and neither of us could sleep, and we were lying there just in silence, and I heard him go, "Billy, are you awake?" And I went, "Yeah," and he goes, "We're going to be world champions tomorrow." And I went, yeah, we are. I distinctly remember him saying that. He goes, we could be wearing rainbow jerseys tomorrow. I think, I reckon we will. We weren't surprised when we won. We knew this is how it was going to go down. It was amazing. I remember sitting there for a second before the gun went off, just kind of looking around going, wow, this is bizarre. Like, never would I thought I was going to end up here.
Okay, so how old were you then, Billy?
19 years old. I think the Worlds were in August. No, sorry, I was 20. I was retired by 25.
Sure.
Things started to fall apart then. I went home for Christmas, did a bunch of appearances and things like that. and really struggled with all that. It was very weird. Well, I guess in the whole year, the goal had been to win the world title, and then once you've done it, now suddenly people kind of want to know you, and they have an expectation of who this person is.
Sure.
And I was just a kid, and I didn't know what I was doing. You know, I was being expected to turn up for events, and I was being paid appearance money to turn up and win, but I just had a holiday, and I couldn't win, and so that kind of messed with my head a bit. And I had a bit of success. I won a stage in a tour over there somewhere. I won a couple of smaller races and that, but really wasn't into it anymore. I wasn't enjoying it. But by the second time I went around, I was already in two minds about whether I even wanted to be riding the bike. Sure. So even though I went okay in Mexico, I wasn't 100% in it. Raced the national track titles in Brisbane, where I think I got a bronze medal in the kilo or something. And then we went to Europe again. And in the second tour there, that was when I called it quits finally. And so the next day we started, and it was clear and sunny, and I rolled out in the bunch and just, you know, the bunch was really just riding along slow and friendly and chatting. And I just kind of looked around and went, oh, I'm done. I'm finished. Peeled over and sat in the grass and waited for the team car, and I just said, I want to go home.
So had things been building to that point, or was it just an epiphany? I
was really up and down. Like I just felt lost. I didn't want to be there. I didn't have my heart in cycling, but again, didn't know what else I wanted to do. This had now become this identity that I'd built, that I was this bike rider guy, but I felt like I wasn't. I just liked winning. I really enjoyed the feeling of winning. And it was something that I'd never had before. So when I suddenly tasted this victory, I was like, wow, I want to do this.
For sure.
But the thing was, the sport was incidental. I didn't have a particular love for cycling. It was just, this was the thing I was good at. And I grew to love it. I mean, I grew to enjoy it. I still like riding to this day, but it was very much a love of winning. It didn't get any better there, really. I came home, I got them to fly me back to Adelaide, because I didn't really want to go back to where my parents were. I wasn't sure how to announce to them or anything. Not that they were always supportive, but I just felt like I've let people down here. It's sort of hard to know where this sort of thing all began for me, because looking back now in hindsight, I can see maybe I'd had problems with, you know, emotional problems, or maybe even full-blown depression from back then. You know, I was definitely an up and down kind of person with, you know, a tendency to be quite dark a lot of the time. But it wasn't until I came back from the second time I went to live in America and came back and went to live with my parents and basically almost had a full nervous breakdown. I was just depressed to the point of not being able to get out of bed, heavily abusing drugs, alcohol, the whole lot. And it sort of culminated with me virtually trying to check myself into a psych ward. And from there, things started getting better, but very, very slowly. We started, first of all, with counselling, medication, which I'd avoided my whole life. And it didn't get better straight away, but for me, you know, I did, and still I do have a tendency to be a bit, the word I always use is dark. I go to dark places sometimes, but I don't do it in an outward, you know, violent or angry manner. I just get quiet and I just go to a bad place. And I think a lot of men do that, and we internalize it and we don't ask for help, and we think I've got to sort this out myself. But for me, if you do that long enough, people die. For me, I started with. They did start me on antidepressant medication, which for me worked for a period of time, and then I came off it. And I found since then that a lot of it for me was having some sort of directional purpose and utilising the resources around me, the people, family, friends, things like that. Because that's the first thing you isolate from when you are in a depressed state. You know, particularly, again, I keep saying this, but particularly men tend to isolate. We'll tend to block ourselves off. We'll stop going to the sport club. We'll stop riding our bike, stop surfing. You know, tend to sleep in all day.
So those things you're talking about, if that's for a day or two, is that depression, or are you talking more long term?
That's a tough one, because everyone has bad days. There's a difference between going, oh, I'm not going to go into work today, I feel a bit down, I'm going to watch some scary movies and just, you know, sit here and eat 3 pizzas. If you don't have the ups and downs, that's almost worse. I think there's a flatlining kind of depression as well. I think there's a high and low type of thing, and then there's some people that just flatline, that don't feel much. They don't feel bad, but they don't feel good. You know, when you suddenly realise, I haven't felt good for 2 years, you know, or you things that you really used to cherish and take pride and joy in suddenly just mean nothing.
Yeah.
And for me, that was what cycling ended up being like. I remember looking, I left my medals and jerseys and stuff under the seat of a car for about 10 years.
Wow.
They meant nothing to me.
Yeah.
And even my wife hadn't seen the video of the world titles because I'd lost the tape.
Yeah.
But when somebody finally put it on YouTube and we watched it, I didn't feel good about it.
Yeah.
I watched it and it just brought up all of that, I just went again for a few days just to kind of a weird, dark, kind of empty place.
Yeah.
And no reason for it. That's the other thing too, is if you have a shitty life, you have a reason to feel down, okay? And that might still be depression, but you may be just having a crappy time.
Yeah.
But when everything around you is awesome and you still can't get out of bed, that's a problem.
Okay, so if you are a person who thinks maybe I've got a problem with depression, what would you recommend people do?
Go see a GP.
Yeah.
Straight away, go see a GP or call. I mean, there's so many helplines now, Beyond Blue. I mean, obviously, that's such a great resource.
Yeah.
But the hard thing is making that first step.
Sure.
First of all, realizing that there is something wrong with you, but understanding that there's something that can be done.
Yeah.
That's the biggest problem is, I think when you see people who are depressed, the overriding thing that they all say is that I didn't know this could be better.
Yeah.
I didn't know this could be different. Or the feeling that maybe it can work for me. Maybe I can be better.
Yeah.
Because there's also a sense of I'm different.
There's a lot of hope in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And hearing from people that it can get a bit tricky sometimes hearing from people that are well-meaning and trying to help. I surf, I skateboard with my son, I ride mountain bikes, I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I read, I write, and I think when those things start falling away, that's when I know I'm off track.
Sure.
And I think for people who are coming out of depression, who have maybe had treatment and are on the mend, finding something you're passionate about and getting involved with it is better than any medication for me personally. That is where you will meet people who are like you again, people who are interested in the same stuff, people who will see when you're having a bad day and talk to you about it. Or just say, come for a ride. Sometimes you don't want to talk about it. Sometimes you just want to go for a ride,